Happy Parkrun Day. The day formerly known as Saturday has become Parkrun Day because there's so many photos today on all of the RAV social media, on our Facebook group, on Instagram, of everyone out enjoying a magnificent Saturday across the country. And so many people go to parkrun, and that's what we love to see. People out being active, connecting with other ravers, and having a great time. So if you've been out at parkrun today, make sure that you post some photos either on Instagram and tag Run Against Violence, or put them up in our Facebook group. And we'd love to see it because we all love parkrun. I hope you have had a magnificent Saturday. We are officially halfway through the 2024 Run Against Violence Virtual Team Challenge. I don't know if we can really say it is going quickly. It feels like it is, but at the same time, I know my body's feeling very, very tired. So I assume there are a few other tired legs out there also. But there are some magnificent achievements unfolding. First of all, we have hit $52,994 in direct donations to Love Bites. How amazing, amazing, amazing is that? It's so wonderful to see. And I feel it in my bones that we're going to smash last year's total of $64,000. We aspire to get to $100,000. Last year, overall, we were able to donate $113,000 because there was $67,000 in direct donations, and then we topped it up with a further, roughly $40,000 from the proceeds from the event itself. So all the merchandise sales, the registration fees, etc. So always wonderful. If you're on Facebook watching this, or you're on Instagram, put in the comments if you were at Parkrun today, where you were or where you're watching from now. Everyone always loves to see where all the other ravers are. So even if you're watching this after it's no longer live, on replay, I believe the official term is, make sure you put those comments in because, always love to see where everyone's from. Now, the other amazing news from today is that we have 7 teams home. Well, there's 6 teams home officially, but there's one team that's so close. They seem to have stopped off in somewhere around about Luna Park for a cup of tea or something or other, but they will be home, I'd say, by the time the map updates next. So let's have a quick look at those teams that have found their way home. Boat Crew 2, obviously, Friends of the Swiss Mountain Goat, the Icebreakers, the Waddling Ducks from down in South Australia, Knox Ravers, I'm so happy for you. Trails and Training, great work. And Mildura Ravers, they're obviously doing a bit of sightseeing around Sydney because at the last map update, they're at 1,290 kilometres, but I'm quite confident they'll bring it home tonight as well with M3PS, which is the team that you met Maria and Rob from earlier in the week. My gosh, feels like a while ago now. They're sitting at 1,251 kilometres. So, and of course, will he make it? I think they will. They're at 1,237 right now, and Brave at 1,187. So I suspect overnight we're going to see quite a few of those teams arrive in Sydney. But it's not all about getting to Sydney. The Run Against Violence Virtual Team Challenge is here for everyone. It's for people to set themselves personal challenges, for the teams to set their own goals and achieve them. So if you're out there achieving your goals and doing things that are maybe a personal first for you, please let us know, because we really love to celebrate that. It's marvelous that people even get to the start line of this big event. So we really want to make sure we're telling all of the stories. So please message me on Facebook, or you can leave a comment on this live and just celebrate. If you've got a team member in particular that's done something that's their personal first, then please let us know. We'd love to talk about it more. Fantastic. Thank you, people. I'm so excited for those teams that are across. And you'll notice that on the team results page that particularly for those leading teams, they will continue to rack up their total. Their dot will stay in Sydney, but their total will continue to increase, because they have a game amongst themselves, or those ultra runners, about heading back to Broken Hill to pick the car up, and then some of them will also then make their way back to Sydney again before the end of the 19 days. But they are a particular group of people. They are dedicated athletes that run long distances all the time. So fantastic to watch, but certainly the heart and soul of this event is what's happening along the rest of the course. So this day we are at day 9. This day in 2017, we were at the halfway point. So I've got a little picky. Brad prompted me last night that he has put together quite a few photos through this stage. So I didn't get around to showing some last night, but I've got one of my favourite photos for you tonight. So are you ready? Here we go. I just go clickety click. There we are. Beautiful. So that's us at the halfway line. 650 kilometres done with 650 kilometres still to go. It was a wonderful spot just outside of Condobolin. And I just started getting some fairly serious pain in my legs. So it was a little bit daunting to know what my legs were feeling like. And I still had 650 kilometres to run, but I've been in those challenging situations before, so I knew just to focus in. But let's have a look at who is where. Let's see who's around Condobolin, around that halfway point at the moment. Very good. This is me just stalling a moment while I click lots of buttons. Excellent. Cool. Let's go. Condo. It's going to be out here somewhere. There's Ivanhoe. Oscar, here we go. Happy runners. There we go. Right on the mark. So here's Condobolin. Condo to its mates. We had a really lovely event that night and met with some of the local services and yeah, had a really lovely sit down dinner at one of their local clubs. It was wonderful. Let's see who's out here. So that photo was taken around about where, who's PP? Pavement Plotters. You're almost right on the money as to where that photo that I showed you was taken. We've got also, zooming right in here, we've got Cirque du Soleil's, how appropriate. That's exactly what it feels like coming along this track. And Serotonin Squad Stars. Good, good, good. Now, these are both very experienced teams. So if you're one of the new teams and you're around them, get on their shirt tails and just stick with them over the next few days. They know how to run this thing and get it done. Who else have we got out here? SPD, IRRD champions. I would love to know what those acronyms are for. So if anyone from that team or that knows that team is watching this video, put it in the comments as to what that acronym's for, because I'd love to know where all you guys are from. And well done. You're right on track for finishing it. Now this is going to zoom in lots. 3, 2, 1, run. Brilliant work. So all these teams are in a really healthy position to keep consistently doing what you've been doing. You will get to the end. It might be a little bit of a rush on the last day, but I think you're right on track. Out training, out running, out living. Brilliant work, people. NatCan team. They know how to get this job done. Well done, folks. Hell on Hills also very experienced. And who have we got tucked in here? Happy runners, well done, folks. You're well ahead of the curve there. And Not Fast, Just Furious, another legendary team of RAVs. So, like I said, if you're a new team, just stick with those folks and you will get there in time and in full. Well done. Excellent. So that's all our news from today. Again, if there's anything that you want to do a shout out, if you want to do a shout out to someone that you know on your team has done something pretty exceptional, or you had an amazing day at Parkrun this morning, like I was saying earlier, lots of fantastic photos, please post them in the comments and we can share them up in the group, and just let us know everything that's going on, because you are our eyes and ears out there in the real world. Now, tonight I have for you an interview with a lady called Kerrie Edwards. Kerrie Edwards is our incoming chairperson for RAV. She's been on our committee now for about 2 years, serving as secretary, getting to know the organisation. But she will be leading our organisation in the coming few years. And leading it into its next stage of growth. So I really felt it was important that you get to know her. She is a magnificent human being, but get to know her because you'll be seeing her around a lot more. So I had to pre-record this interview in order to bring it to you this evening. So I am going to go clickety click click and hand you over to a discussion that Kerrie and I had earlier today.
Righty, we'll stop giggling about what we were giggling about before. Hello, Kerrie Edwards. Kerrie,
Hello,
how are you?
I'm good.
So you are our incoming chairperson for Run Against Violence. So Run Against Violence, for people who don't know, is a volunteer-led organisation. We have a very small committee, always looking for people to join our committee. That essentially runs everything that goes on around Run Against Violence, not just the event, but everything else we do throughout the year. Now, Kerrie, you've been on our committee for, is it about 2 years now?
Yeah, almost. It'll be 2 years at the end of this year. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. So I thought and you're like I said, you're our incoming chairperson. So I think it's really important that RAVers out in the community actually get to meet you, because often, up until this point anyhow, the faces that they see most often are Brad and myself, but in fact there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, and particularly moving forward you're going to be at the forefront of our new project. So it's really important that people know. So let's get to know Kerrie Edwards, shall we? Let's start with the basics around where did you grow up, what life has been up until this point. If you could summarize your entire life in about 3 minutes, that would be great.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Melbourne, Victoria. That's where my parents are both English immigrants. So they came across to Australia in the 70s, and principally so that they could bring up a family in a country that was kind of new, growing, and would give the kids access to education. So I was the first kid that came along, and I also have a sister, and we essentially grew up for our early years in Melbourne, and then moved out to the countryside of Victoria and away from the city, and started to learn how to live in a more rural setting, which was kind of interesting. I guess from there, I started to form kind of, what I wanted to do with my life, and that involved going to university and doing a degree in applied science out of the University of Ballarat. And really interesting at the time, my kind of key interest was environmental science, and without giving away my age, environmental science was a pretty new thing back then, and so it was difficult to actually find a degree that enabled me to be able to study in that field. But I found one, so that was really, really exciting for me. So I left home and moved even more regional to Ballarat, and got my degree, made a really great group of friends who I still stay in contact with now, but was offered the opportunity to move across to the Pilbara and work for one of Australia's largest mining companies as a graduate. So the little girl from Ballarat jumped on an aeroplane for the first time in her life when she was like 21, and moved to the Pilbara on her own, which was really interesting, as you could imagine. The Pilbara back in the early 90s was an interesting place to be. And in particular in mining, there's the typical demographical issues around, I think at the time it was something like 1 woman to 9 or 10 men living in the town. So it was a real disparate diversity happening in that space. So it made it even more challenging. So that was really the kickoff to my career in mining and in environmental science. And from there, I met my husband. So he's also in the mining, or was in the mining industry, and he had done his apprenticeship in Newman in the Pilbara. So we got married while we were still living in the Pilbara, and took off on some travelling journey, which kind of really, I guess, some of the pivotal moments in our married life has been centred around travel. So we sold everything and bought a caravan and tootled around Australia in our early 30s. So that was quite unique in itself, but it really gave us some great life experiences. And from there, we started also travelling overseas, and you'll see that the theme's kind of repeated in my history, partnered history, I suppose. So yes, we took about a year and a half off to travel, then kind of ran out of money and said, right, we need to get serious. So we got back into the mining game, and from there, I really started to move out of environmental science and into a broader journal management role, but still in health, safety, environment, communities, security, emergency response, so all of those kind of fields, which I found all of them incredibly interesting. Given an opportunity to move across to South America, to Peru. So my husband and I sold everything again and jumped on a much bigger plane this time and moved across to South America and spent 3 amazing years there. And again, got some amazing cultural experiences and some really incredible travel experiences there as well. After 3 years there, it was kind of like, oh, maybe it's time for a change. My boss rang up and said, do you want to go to Mongolia? I was kind of like, yeah, I don't think so. He's like, well, hard to think about it.
Another thing.
I got off the phone and quickly Googled, where's Mongolia? Between China and Russia and Kazakhstan. Had a chat to my wonderfully supportive husband, and he's like, oh, yeah, why not? So we arrived in Mongolia in the middle of winter. It was like minus 30 degrees, and we kind of went, oh my gosh, what have we done here? But again, just an absolutely amazing community to live in, unbelievable, culturally, unbelievable country to explore, and just some of the history attached to Mongolia blows your mind. So had an awesome experience there as well. So that was another 2 years of our life. Then the opportunity to move across to the US. And that was kind of something I'd been targeting for a while. And along with that came a lot greater responsibility. So moving into more executive level roles. And
you're way too modest, but Kerrie, you are way too modest. Can I suggest that perhaps there would be other personality types if you adopted some of that American kind of stature around how you express what you've achieved? So when we say senior executive roles, they were phenomenal roles, leading teams of thousands and thousands of people in remote areas and implementing
I probably undersell it a little bit.
Incredible. So I'm just sitting here having a good giggle. Oh, I went over to Peru, did this and that. It's like, how many people were on that site that you were managing what is equivalent of a large town?
In Mongolia.
Solely responsible in Mongolia, how many people were on site there?
On site in Mongolia at the time, it varied because it was a FIFO mine site, but between 5,000 and 9,000, just kind of depending on what was going on. Yeah. So huge mining operation. We're in the middle of construction, amazing challenges, and very remote. So we literally had to fly from the capital city out to the mine, and really the only way in and out was via airplane and or on some pretty crappy roads. So yes. And
the responsibility of, or most of the responsibility of the operation of that town, which is a larger population than the town we both live near.
Yes.
And that their safety, their well-being, and everything came back on your shoulders, sweetie.
Yes. Yes. Saying that, great, our broad management team, as you can imagine.
Yeah, of course.
But yes, we'll have specific accountabilities, and I have
absolutely. It's a size of challenge in my mind when I think about the things that you've done that I would possibly even shy away from. It's an enormous challenge to take on, and I think that's one of the things that is about you. You're a humble person, you're a modest person, but golly gosh, underneath that surface, there's some amazing stuff that's happened. Like it's just super strong. Wonderful. Now, so you've you've spent your time in the US. You've had an amazing corporate career. One of the things I also love about your background is just how many different cultures you've lived in, your appreciation of cultural diversity, your appreciation of you've lived in some areas where there is profound poverty and limited education, through to working with, as you say, the 1% sort of thing, the people at the other end of the corporate chain, I guess, who have absolutely every privilege in the world, and you've had to negotiate with chieftains. Is that an appropriate term for? You've had to, all the what was that? Sorry.
Community heads is probably the
community heads. Is that the right term for it? Okay, thank you. And all sorts of things in just like I said, there's multiple books in the stories that you've lived through. You've now settled in the Central West of New South Wales, and so you've come back. You've got a really beautiful place where you're living, and then you get invited along to a Rotary breakfast one morning. And there's this chick from Run Against Violence up there presenting. We had a mutual friend who wanted us to meet. Thank you, Pearl. You changed both our lives. It's much appreciated. So you went along to that breakfast, and then you heard for the first time about Run Against Violence and what we were doing. What is it about what you heard or saw or experienced in that room that piqued your interest to continue the conversation?
I think there were several things that kind of typed together that piqued my interest. One is the story. So you presented your story and what you were looking to achieve. And I think, your enthusiasm, your passion, who you had engaged with to do what you did, the fact that you ran 1,300 kilometres, which I just think is crazy. All of those things stacked up to one of the key reasons. I think secondly, I was looking for something to sink my teeth into, something that I could give my time back to. Working in the mining industry, we have long hours, long weeks, and you don't get a lot of your own personal time. Everything you're doing is out there for the community on behalf of the company. And I wanted to be able to do something that was about what I personally would gain satisfaction from and be able to give to. And then I think the third one was there was a compelling message attached to the story that you shared, Kerrie. And for me, that was very much about focusing on family violence in the upstream part of prevention. And why did that strike me as compelling? I have a background in health and safety. And as a safety professional, one of the things we're always trying to do is look for the root cause of a problem. Why did something happen? And we're wanting to make sure that once we understand why something happens, we actually start to target that upstream end of causal factors. And that all sounds really complicated, but essentially it made me feel like I would have some value to add, because part of my career was about taking a step back, focusing perhaps less on mitigation and more on prevention. Let's stop this from happening in the first place. So that really, really appealed to me. My knowledge at the time, and still is, light when it comes to domestic and family violence and prevention. I grew up in a very protected household, and personally was not exposed to those kinds of situations. Through my working life, certainly I was given the communities that I was working within. I got to be, I guess, a part of people's stories when it came to domestic and family violence, but again, wasn't personally involved. So I guess all of those things together stacked up to, wow, maybe there's a niche here for me, and somewhere that I can, bring my experience, my passion, and my ability to, be able to give some time and be able to make a difference.
And it's certainly, all those aspects you've talked about were what piqued my interest in you too, in terms of, apart from the absolutely delightful human being to be around, it was that as you say, that as soon as you started talking about models that you're using to prevent, safety, minimize risk, and do that upstream planning and all those sorts of things, just my brain just went nuts. It was just like, this is the stuff. We've got to take models. We're really going to innovate in the way we go about domestic and family violence, the prevention of it. We have to innovate, and innovation comes from pulling these concepts that have worked in other sectors and applying them to come up with something new. If we've got things that we know we can draw on, then let's do it, because it accelerates that process. If we keep doing the same things in the same way, we're just going, in this particular instance, we are not going to get ahead of the curve. We're not going to get ahead of the problem. We absolutely have to provide that response and recovery at the moment. And I noticed yesterday the federal government's dedicated another 4.7 billion to downstream response, which is desperately needed. But we're never going to have enough money. We're never going to have enough resources if we don't get going on this upstream stuff and have a strategy for it. In all the announcements lately, there's not even a mention of primary prevention. So it's a really hard thing for people to get their brains around. So
it is
brilliant. Okay, so you've been to a Rotary breakfast, and it's gone well. We've had a bit of a chat. There's still, again, you're a woman that can pretty much, from particularly a governance board, that next phase of your career, as we tend to enter at this stage in life, you could choose a lot of seats, a lot of opportunities, a lot of places to put your time and energy. And so what's kind of kept you going? What's kept your appetite with this going? And what is it?
Yeah, I think it was being able to see what the potential could be for Run Against Violence. And when we started to talk about that, we'd go for our walks and we'd chat, and I sat in on some of the meetings to kind of hear what the rest of the committee were talking about. And I just had this feeling in my mind that RAV can go wherever it wants to go in this space. It's a space that it holds, I won't say exclusively, but it's got in that upstream prevention space, it's well established. There's a great foundation already in place. So where to next? So to be a part of something like that, how exciting! And to be a part of something that has made such a difference and has the potential to make so much more difference. My arms are waving because I'm excited.
I love it. Yes. It gives me goosebumps when you talk.
Yeah,
it means I'm not crazy. I'm not on my own, sweetie.
No, you're not on your own. And I think the sky's the limit. So, it's a matter of us working through how do we, this is then where my more methodical brain kicks in and says, so how do we methodically get there and do it in a sustainable way without, draining ourselves along the way, and making sure we're bringing our people and the people who have invested their time and energy into RAV, how do we bring them along the journey as well?
Yeah. And that's, again, I completely agree with that too, in that having passion is one thing. Like we all have a lot of passion. There's an enormous number of people in the community that have passion for bringing about change, unless that is implemented methodically and in a coordinated and focused fashion, it doesn't gain traction. So that's a critical element, which is something we're going to be looking at quite a bit in the future. So we might keep that one under our hat and talk about that, because we're coming up to 19 minutes already. So yeah, I know. So, but there is this next phase. So, but as a bit of a teaser, a lead into talking about this new phase for RAV, where, if all your dreams came true for RAV, where would you see the organisation in, say, 20 years? Not 5 years, it's too short a time, but, you know, the big, wide, you know, let's open up that horizon, up, you know, the time horizon, so we can dream of it. What do you think it could do? Not what it will, but maybe what it could do.
What it could. Yeah, look, I think for me, RAV will be one part of a bigger organisation. So when I say RAV, I think about more so the event. So the event is one piece of our puzzle, and we've filled in what the other pieces look like. We're clear on where we're headed with those. We've moved beyond Australia, where we're international, because we've got something that's so good. People want it and can see that the value is there, and that it's delivered something that a community, you know, our communities are in desperate need of, and that's, you know, communities where family violence no longer lives. And I see us being, you know, very much a self-sustaining organisation, which maybe is part of it is philanthropic, part of it is about, you know, fundraising, but we've stayed true to our identity, and we've held what we wanted to achieve close to our hearts, so that it's still there in 20 years. We can kind of look at it, you and I, Kerrie, when we're sitting there having a glass of wine, and we can look back and go, you know, wow, this is an amazing thing. I don't know if I articulate it really clearly or not, but that's what's in
perfect. I can see your face light up. That's the most important thing about it, I think, is that drive and being able to just see that it can be all these different things. And it's, you know, as you mentioned, our mission is to build communities where family violence can no longer live. So it's not a case of just being activism or waving placards and things like that, which is important work. It's an important starting point. It's actually doing that longer term work and having a strategy for making that happen, and having the pieces in play. And as you say, you know, we'll talk about in the next session that we chat together, we have, you know, being able to identify what's working and what's not at the moment, because there's an enormous amount of activity out there. So things are happening in the primary prevention space, but it's a case of, you know, I think RAV is uniquely positioned to keep identifying those gaps and bringing them together and closing them, and gradually moving communities to that place, because we don't have, in the domestic and family violence space, we don't really have a vision for what that actually looks like. If you asked anyone on the street, describe to me what it would be like to live in a community where there is no family violence. It's not a picture. We need to have that picture instilled in absolutely everyone's mind, so that we can formally and informally move toward that, because what you see is what you'll end up becoming. So yeah, from a vision perspective. So it's we're in a great position to take hold of that and run with it. So,
yep, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kerrie, for your time. And yes, like I said, we'll be getting you back over the next week or so to let's have a bit of a chat about this new phase for RAV. And thank you for coming into the committee. Thank you for, you know, expressing that interest, you know, a couple of years ago. And, you know, you can't understand how happy I am that you're our incoming chairperson. I'm absolutely stoked. You'll do an amazing job. Right, yeah. Speak to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Kerrie.
Bye.